INTS 334. My name is Clark Farley, and this is my video journal 1. Environmental justice is the restorative work to solve the systemic problems with the environment and to empower the communities that are disproportionately affected by environmental racism. Environmental racism is the systemic racism perpetuated by the systems of capital burdening minorities. Examples of this racism are extensive, from pollution burdens, lack of POC representation in environmental discourse, and the blatant lack of protections on predominantly Black and Hispanic areas and tribal lands. Understanding environmental justice concerns and environmental racism can only be done through a fully intersectional lens. This means considering and actively addressing the history of racism in policy, business, and government. A good framework for this is Mike Ewall's 17 Principles of Environmental Justice. These principles are not implemented enough in today's environmental conversation. A common thread through all of these readings is the need for the full involvement of those affected by environmental injustice and the accountability of those perpetuating environmental racism. Dr. Robert Bullard clarifies this perfectly when he said, quote, "Whether by conscious design or institutional neglect, communities of color in urban ghettos, in rural poverty pockets, or on economically impoverished Native American reservations face some of the worst environmental devastation in the nation. The importance of prioritizing race, socioeconomics, and history in the environmental justice conversation is inseparable from understanding the brutal history of North America, with the devastating genocide and colonization of Indigenous people upon the arrival of the white settler, and the Atlantic slave trade, as well as the current forms of colonization and segregation that still exist in the United States. An ironic, sad truth of the current environmental injustices in America is that the Indigenous people of this land were truly the first environmentalists, caring over the land and the animals of this land without profit motive and with deep spiritual regard for its continued care and prosperity. With the erasure of natives, the erasers of their philosophies, cultures, religions, languages, and stories were followed. Respecting, understanding, and platforming the descendants of the survivors of this great genocide through the environmental community is a crucial part of this conversation. Recent environmental injustices include the legislation and installment of the Dakota pipeline and the pollution burden and public neglect of Black communities, such as the Ferguson water crisis in Michigan from 2014 to 2019. A crucial part of addressing these problems is listening to Indigenous and Black leaders and including them in the stewardship of their own lands and neighborhoods.